Hello, my name is Andrew Keane. Welcome to Keane on America, the daily show about everything that matters, with the world's leading commentators and thinkers. Hello everyone, we are back at DLD 2026, where the mood is rather somber, pessimistic on technology. All the Europeans seem to be concerned that American companies are destroying the world, especially with their AI. Not everyone agrees. My guest today, Nicholas Thompson, is the CEO of The Atlantic, former editor-in-chief of Wired magazine, a tech guy through and through. Nick, you've been speaking at DLD. Do you agree that the atmosphere in Europe, especially when it comes to American tech, is a bit somber?
I think the atmosphere here in Europe towards America in general is a bit somber, but yes, it's particularly somber about American tech.
Do you think that's unfair?
I think there are a lot of really interesting questions about European tech and how it can catch up, and I think that's an important conversation. And I do think that there's resentment at the American tech companies for growing, and I do think there's some problems in the way the American tech companies have acted, but it's also the case that the products the American tech companies have built are awesome.
When you say resentment, do you mean that in a kind of classic Nietzschean way, that they are full of bitterness? They wish they were America, and since they're not, they take it out on the Americans?
No, I don't think I don't think it's that. I mean, it's like the Americans resent the European soccer teams, right? I mean, and the question is, like, how can the American soccer team catch up to Europe? How can the European tech industry catch up to America? It's more like, it's not Nietzschean, it's just standard competitive.
The World Cup is in America. Don't need to tell you that. This year, 2026. We've done lots of shows on it. What's more likely, Nick, that the European tech companies create an AI monster, or America wins the World Cup?
America wins the World Cup.
Wow.
Yeah. And Christian Pulisic, I don't know, Sergio Dest, Tyler Adams, like, this team's it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, but everyone knows, Nick, you know better than I do, that America's not going to win the World Cup. So what's the problem?
Well, I mean, actually, if you go back to a serious answer, right? I mean, Europe did build DeepMind, right? DeepMind comes out of the United Kingdom, right? That is a tech monster. The notion that anybody could build a $1 trillion market cap AI company at this point and catch up to the market leaders, extremely hard. Now, could Europe have developed Anthropic 5 years ago? Yes, but I think the ships have all sailed out of the harbor now.
Yeah, I wonder whether all the ships have sailed out of all the harbors. Let's use the example of DeepMind then.
Yeah.
You bring it up, but of course when Google acquired DeepMind, it wasn't even a business, let alone an unprofitable business. It was full of smart people. And to get from DeepMind to Gemini and Notebook LLM and all the other miracles at Google,
yeah,
you needed not just the deep pockets of a large corporation like Google, but also perhaps the strategic thinking and ambition, which doesn't exist in the UK.
Well, does it not exist at all? I mean, one can imagine a path where DeepMind had stayed independent and they had stayed in the UK, and then they had hired a CEO who'd come over to the UK and done kind of what Eric Schmidt did to the dreamers of Google early on and built a business around it, right? You still would have had the smart people and you could have had the business sense. They took the other path where they were acquired into Google. Hard to say. Clearly this path worked out wonderfully for them, but there probably was another path where they stayed in Europe.
So what's the fate then of Nick?
Of Nick.
Not of Nick. Whoops, that was a Freudian.
Dust and ashes, like all of us.
What is the fate of Europe then if it's not able to create tech Goliaths, if it's not able to play in the new AI game dominated now obviously by the US and increasingly by China?
Well, so we don't know, right? Like, we don't. Right now, it looks like there will be, 4 major AI winners, right? And they're going to come out of this and they're going to dominate for a period of time. But tech changes very quickly. And it could turn out that there's a lot of value to be built elsewhere in the stack. It could turn out that these hyperscaler AI models, that it becomes commoditized in 3 years. Like, we don't know whether they will continue to have their advantage, right? The tech industry is going to shake and it's going to move. So there are all kinds of opportunities. There always are. That's the coolest thing about covering tech, is you think it's all locked in, it's all baked, it's never going to be different from the way it is, and then presto, suddenly it is. How long ago did TikTok not exist? Was it not a competitive force? It seemed like social media was locked in. No one could possibly compete. Oh, look at that. There's TikTok. Not that it's the ideal competitor, not that it's like, the fulcrum of democracy, but, it does show things change even when it doesn't seem possible for there to be change.
Yeah, you bring up TikTok, but of course, it's a Chinese company. It's
Sure
surprising in a way, but it's not surprising it's Chinese. So if there is a new TikTok in the AI space, it's more likely to come from China or perhaps Singapore or conceivably even India than it is from Europe, isn't it?
Well, it depends, right? I mean, so what is it that actually slows down the European tech ecosystem? And there's a whole bunch of interesting questions, right? The number one answer, is it regulation? Is it that there isn't a large enough common market? Is it cultural around risk-taking, right? Risk-taking is encouraged in Silicon Valley. It's discouraged in Europe. Is it something to do with immigration policy? I don't know, but these are part of the mix, and they can also be fixed, they can be changed, and there are a lot of people in Europe who want to change that.
So briefly, Nick, for our European friends, how can they change? Is it political? Is it economic? Do they need to disband or reinvent the EU?
Well, America is helping with this project in that one of the things that has hurt the European tech scene is that many of the top European scientists, researchers, think Patrick Collison, think Jan LeCun, have come to America. And as America becomes a harder place for people to immigrate to, as we sort of attack our elite, universities, as the administration kind of discourages a lot of this, I think that's going to certainly help Europe. Beyond that, I think that deregulation is a really important issue. I had a AI startup. It didn't, we sold it, but didn't really succeed. We didn't even operate in Europe because it was too hard to figure out GDPR, right? It just gets too complicated. Figuring out the right trade-off between protecting European rights, protecting copyright, protecting things of real value, but making it possible for startups and large companies to operate, with ease, that's probably the simplest fix.
You mentioned regulation. A few years ago, I wrote a book called How to Fix the Future. I interviewed Margaret Vestager, at the time was running EU competition or anti-competition, antitrust. And I was very positive about her. I'm not so sure now. It seems to me as if the one thing that the Europeans have excelled in, it's regulation, and it hasn't really benefited them. What's your take, if not on Vestager and EU regulation, on the whole idea of Europeans leading the world in regulation? Is it something they should be proud of or rather ashamed of?
There are elements that one can be proud of, right? Certainly there have been sort of moral issues that have been brought to the fore. There's some technical changes. I certainly like charging with my USB-C port. I do think that regulatory conversations can lead to useful changes. I do think the threat of antitrust can lead to useful changes, but the proof is in the pudding. And if you look at the number of AI startups and you look at the difficulty of doing business in Europe for tech firms, it's clear that the policies of the last 10 years have not worked. So whether you blame that on Vestager, whether you blame it on other factors, I don't think you could say it was I don't think that whole regulatory attitude, framework, set of bills, even if they're things that are good, I don't think it was a net positive for Europe.
You're the grandson of one of the great architects of the American Cold War and of the protection of Europe. You're not perhaps an overtly political person, you're more on the tech front. But do you care about the fate of Europe politically, culturally? What most concerns you about the decline of this continent?
Oh, massively. Europe has been our allies. We're here in Germany. We've been, close to Germany. My grandfather, was from the time of the Marshall Plan until, very recently, the United States and Europe have hand in hand. And, the great challenge of our time, democracy versus autocracy, democracy wins if it holds together. This fissure, this notion, the Trump administration's foreign policy, which believes that a weak Europe is better than a strong Europe, is quite antithetical to the beliefs that I grew up, certainly the beliefs that my grandfather Paul Nitze had, which is that the best thing is a strong Europe, a strong United States holding hand in hand. That would be where I am much more politically aligned.
And where does technology play here? If America is to rebuild its relations with Europe, perhaps in a post-Trumpian world, a post-MAGA world, what do you think your grandfather perhaps might suggest? Or other kinds of committed Atlanticists? How can technology be used not so much to impose American economic interests and benefit American corporations, but actually rebuild this alliance?
Well, I think integration of American tech with European tech. I mean, not that like ASML works extremely well with NVIDIA, right? But the more links there are, the stronger the European tech scene is, the stronger the American tech scene is, and the more linked they are, the better it is, both for our economy, both for Europe's economy, and both for the project of hoping that the future AI stack, whatever it is built in places with democratic values. And so that is effectively built into the AI stack if this is going to be the infrastructure that's helping control the world.
You talk about the AI stack. What can American companies, regulators, academics learn from Europeans about building an AI stack that doesn't turn into the social media stack and create all sorts of discord, benefits companies, Silicon Valley companies like Facebook, but doesn't seem to benefit anybody else?
Well, this is a really important point, and maybe it goes back to what you were asking about where Europe can go and what Europe can do. There is in Europe much more of a feeling of support for open source AI, right? And whether that means open sourcing the model, whether it means open weights, whether it means open sourcing the technology, whether it means properly licensing and attributing the copyrighted material that is fed into the models, all the sort of the different elements of it. In part because Europe doesn't have one of the AI giant conglomerates, in part because of social attitudes in Europe. And I do think there are real values in open source AI, and that it's extremely important for startups, and I hope it will be a big part of the future. So perhaps, both to answer this question and the one you asked a couple minutes ago, the path for European AI is to build as many different levels and connections in the open source stack.
Is there such a thing as AI ethics? Is it a misnomer? It seems to be something that the Europeans are investing in, maybe not economically, but intellectually.
Of course there's something called AI ethics. I mean, there's the ethics of how you build a model, there's the ethics of how you train a model, there's the ethics of how you red team your model, and the ethics of how you use the models. And each of those are different questions, and absolutely the Europeans are contributing to the debates on everything.
So where are you on AI, Nick, in the US in 2026? Are you excited? Are you concerned?
I'm excited and I'm terrified. I run a media company, right? And AI is the best tool we've ever had for journalism. It's the best tool we've ever had for media. You can learn so much so quickly. You can find great stories, right? Great journalism is finding a needle in a haystack, and AI is a giant magnet. On the other hand, it could completely obliterate our business model, right? We're all seeing search traffic and referral traffic go down as it's absorbed into AI engines. It could make it entirely possible for people using AI to outcompete all kinds of journalistic institutions. So it is a business threat to us and also an amazing tool. So, I don't know, excited and terrified.
Where are you on the IP? I think the New York Times is still suing OpenAI for supposedly stealing all its content.
Supposedly for entirely. I mean,
yeah,
clearly.
And this is a story that we went through in Web 1 and then certainly in Web 2, and Silicon Valley seems to win every round.
I don't know if they're going to win this round. I mean, they're going to win this round. I mean, Silicon Valley's position, and the position that the big tech companies took from the very beginning, was it's a pain in the butt to license this stuff. It's a pain in the butt to figure out what's in it. It's a pain in the butt to pay creators. Obviously, we should, based on copyright law, based on ethics, based on terms of service. But you know what? We're not going to do that. We're just going to charge ahead, and if this works, we'll be worth $1 trillion, and we'll deal with it later. Now we're in the deal with it later stage. And so you can see the lawsuits. You can see the lawsuit that Anthropic just lost. There are a couple of lawsuits that were mixed past summer, including Meta and Anthropic again. The Times case is still pending against OpenAI. We have a pending lawsuit against Cohere. There will be a number of court cases in the next years that will determine whether there's a fair exchange of value between the people who created the content and the AI companies that built these massively profitable businesses on the content. So my view is that yes, you should pay for the content you ingested into your models. You should properly license it, and there should be a share of the revenue should go to the content creators. ProRata is the shining example of this. They've built an AI search engine that actually compensates creators. Yes, they should do this. And Europe can play a really important role in this. And you've seen this is actually where regulation can be helpful. If Europe is able to pass effective regulation saying you have to disclose what you trained on and you have to compensate, you can then AI companies will be forced to do that here, and that will help them figure out a model to do it everywhere. So that would be great.
Shouldn't it be obvious, though, that you can't steal, and that if the intelligence of your AI is premised on content which you've illegally taken or taken without the approval of its creators, then by definition you're breaking the law?
Well, so it is more legally complicated than that, right? My analysis, I only know American copyright law, I don't know other copyright law, but what the AI companies argue, if you squint, you can understand. And they said, well, wait, steal is the wrong word. Steal would be if I came into your house and there was a book on the table and I took it and I left. What we did is we came into your house, and maybe you had a sign that said don't come into the house, but the door was unlocked and we came in, and then we read everything in your house and we memorized it and we left. And that's different from stealing because they didn't take it. Now, they learned all this stuff by reading it all, and they created this competitive business model. So there is some ambiguity in the copyright law, which is why these cases aren't slam dunks, and it's why we don't just win. So that's where the complexity comes from.
You know what I'm going to do, Nick, to make your point? My wife runs litigation at Google, and she's also very house proud.
For Google?
For Google. So I'm going to invite you over to our house in San Francisco, and you can start stealing stuff. And then when she objects, you can say, well, you're taking our stuff at the Atlantic.
Yeah. I mean, Google is the most interesting and complicated case because they have built Gemini with all this material they've got from the web. And they also have their search engine, and their search engine drives everybody to your website. And so no one has sued Google, as far as I know, because Google does provide real value. To me, the most important question for 2026 for the media industry and AI is this. Can Google, or OpenAI, or Claude, or Perplexity, or someone, actually build an AI search engine that provides value to the content creators? Instead of here's a check for $1 million. Actually, Gemini search now drives enough people to websites, or enough high-value people, or enough of a certain kind of people on a certain kind of query that they've determined that the publishers can continue to thrive. Can they do that, or will they drive the publishing industry out of business? That is the most important question.
And is it more likely that Google gets it because they own YouTube, so they have a little bit more sympathy towards content creators than some of the other players like OpenAI?
You know, there are different people at all these companies who love the publishing industry, who understand the position I'm making. In fact, Google's chief litigator is married to a journalist, I just learned. So, there's I think there's two things. There's the self-interested case. Google's product is better because the news industry exists and creates content that can be fed into it. Gemini is better because the news industry exists, and there are people who go out, they report facts, they verify them, they put them on the internet, and those facts can then be fed into Gemini. And so if Google, Gemini, Perplexity, the other AI companies drive that all out of business, their product will be worse, right? We have a mutually symbiotic relationship, as they say in biology class. So that's part of it. Then there's an ethical question, like Sundar Pichai loves reading newspapers. He loves reading magazines. He doesn't want his product to destroy it. So there are reasons why this could get built. Now, the reasons why it might not get built could slow down. They're in this life or death competition with OpenAI. So you can see the complexities inside the Google boardroom.
Are you getting calls as the CEO at The Atlantic? It's a significant paper, a significant magazine, backed by serious capital, serious players in Silicon Valley, by senior people at companies like OpenAI or Anthropic or Google, about this kind of stuff, saying, what can we build that will benefit you so that we can work together on this?
I don't know the call starts that way. But yeah, certainly I talk to all these companies. I have friends at all these companies. I know the partners at all these companies. I have very strong views, which I've just expressed, that if you were to ask those people the same questions, they wouldn't have the same views, but certainly we talk.
Do you care as the CEO of The Atlantic about who wins in AI? Someone's going to win, whether it's Sam Altman at OpenAI or Google or Anthropic. Does it really matter to you?
Well, that's a hard question to answer. So A, I don't know if there'll be one winner. Two, I do have views on the virtues and vices of all the different companies. And I will say that there's maybe a difference in the ethical concern for the things I care about between OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and then Grok and Elon Musk. And if Elon Musk is to win, I think that would be a different situation than if everybody else were to win.
Why?
Well, Elon actively has no interest in the health of the publishing industry. I mean, he has a very different view of it. He views it as a competing source of power, and is in fact using everything in his tool set to counter. He does not like. Let me just put it this way. He may have people who work for him. In fact, he does, right? And I know some who care a lot about the publishing industry. Elon's views of the publishing industry are quite different from the heads of other companies. So if he wins, it may well be worse for us. But maybe not. You never know.
He's unlikely to win. I mean, he might be a small-time winner, but the bigger players, or certainly the more dominant players at the moment, OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, seem...
Yeah, except it's usually a good strategy not to bet against Elon, right? There's all kinds of reasons to think he won't win. Certainly seems behind. Certainly, Grok's choices right now on pornography seem utterly insane from a branding perspective. On the other hand, didn't seem like Tesla was going to win against Toyota.
You ran Wired. You've been through these booms and busts in Silicon Valley before. Is it a classic boom at the moment, a bubble with AI?
That's one of the most interesting questions in AI right now. There are a lot of signs that there's a bubble, right? It's not actually providing economic value, not actually providing that much economic value. There's a lot of circular financing. We're starting to have a bunch of debt financing. On the other hand, the potential for it to create economic value is massive. The reality of what it does is absolutely true. Anybody who says AI isn't great, I think, is completely wrong. And the companies that are spending most of the money have large amounts of cash, which prevents the risks of a bubble. Usually what happens if there's a bubble, I borrow a bunch of money, something goes bankrupt, then I'm in real trouble. If I just have a giant pile of cash and then I buy a bunch of NVIDIA chips with that pile of cash, it's less of a risk.
Are we in a golden period for content? Lots of pessimism not only in Europe but inside the US on content. You talked about giant piles of cash. You have some Jobs cash at the Atlantic. I'm not sure if you're profitable or not.
We are profitable. We don't use the Jobs cash. We contribute to the Jobs cash. That's our goal. I don't think we're the principal contributor, but we are making profit, positive EBITDA.
So if you're making profit, New York Times is as well, one or two other content companies, why is there so much gloom in the content business?
Well, because most people aren't making money. I mean, we're making money because we have a very specific business model that works in 2025. We publish, exceptional journalism based on real reporting tied to individuals with great brands, and we do a good job promoting it, and then we sell subscriptions against it, right? That model works right now. And you do the math of how the back engine works, and you can make that model work. Now, it's hard to do that because you have to have the great content, the great reporting. You have to do the math of the back engine work. Most publications have a different model, which is, you provide more content, you provide at scale, and you sell advertisements against it. And that model is really hard to make work, particularly as the social platforms have cut down on their distribution. And so the journalism industry as a whole is in decline. But back to your question, are we in a golden age? Probably. Because there are these established publications that are doing great, putting out lots of good stuff, and there's also this incredible world of Substack creators and individual creators and people who can run their own podcasts and interview an interesting person every day you can listen to in your AirPods. And none of that you could do a few years ago. So there's awesome stuff going on and a lot of fear.
And what about the issue of democracy and information? Again, a lot of the gloom suggests that because publications aren't working, or they're biased, or they're conspiratorial, democracy is a victim. Do you buy that narrative?
I do think democracy is having a more dispersed media ecosystem and then having an algorithmic sorting system that puts you into filter bubbles and is most likely to send you to information that aligns with your prior beliefs and whatever tribe you believe in. Yeah, that's a huge problem, and it's a huge problem for democracy. So yes, but it's not because the publications are conspiratorial, it's because of the sorting mechanisms.
Two final questions, Nick, on all this. You note that the Atlantic is doing rather well, which reflects well on you as the CEO. What aren't you doing well? What do you want to achieve better in 2026?
Well, we have to figure out how to get through what's going on in AI. We have to work, as the question you asked earlier, we have to work with the AI companies to try to build some kind of AI search engine in which there is a fair exchange of value. And we have to do that through litigation, through public appearances, through podcasts like this, through private negotiations, through supporting partners who actually do it, like ProRod, which I mentioned, right? If we don't do that, that's bad news for everybody. We have to do better at building direct relationships, right? We have to make sure that we have direct relationships with people that are outside of the algorithmic sorting, right? So we have to make sure that we're crushing it in live events, that we've got tons, as many people as possible in our newsletters. Please sign up. People have downloaded the app. Download the app. Please download the Atlantic app, right? We increased the number of print magazines we do just for this reason. We now do 12 a year instead of 10 issues a year. So we have to make sure we have really strong direct relationships, and then we've got to figure out, I mentioned the subscription math, we've got to figure out how to do that in a very different age of content creation. And, one more big problem, like we're about to enter an age where we might not have humans reading the web, right? You may not go to theatlantic.com. You may just say to your agent, which you're wearing, in your earring, hey agent, tell me the news that matters today. And so we've got to figure out a business model to interact with agents.
And then final question touches on this, Nick. As you say, at The Atlantic, you've got some wonderful writers. John Rausch, Pete Wehner, old friends of mine on the show all the time.
Those guys are great.
Tons of people from The Atlantic. But they're all established brands now. I don't quite know how they became established brands. Rausch, for example, through his Brookings Institute. Pete Wehner through his writings and involvement with the church. He began his career actually working, I think, in the Reagan White House. The challenge isn't so much with the brands like Wehner or Rausch or Tom Friedman, but kids coming out of college. That your son's about to go to Stanford. This new generation of kids who are going to need to make their way in the new world. You did it as a journalist, although you had a rocky first few years in your 20s. What needs to happen to make sure that we realize our talented journalists, our creators in the next generation, where AI, as you've noted, it's unavoidable. It's the nature of things.
Yeah, we got to make sure that people still feel excited about the moral value of journalism, about the intellectual value of journalism. I mean, I love it as a career because it's just continually feeding your curiosity. Going out and being a reporter is an amazing way to spend your 20s. We need to make sure that really smart people come in. And then at a place like The Atlantic, your business model relies on both hiring people who are known, who want to come to The Atlantic, who are going to succeed, right? You've seen them produce 10 years of great work at the New York Times. They come to The Atlantic, and ideally they produce better work. But then also building people up, right? You also need to be able to hire people at 25 as assistant editors, fact checkers, copy editors, and then eventually have them become senior editors, managers, or great writers. And so you need to build a machine that can bring in great people, get the best work out of them, and grow talent and attract talent. That's part of our challenge.
Nicholas Thompson, CEO of The Atlantic, not shy to express your views. Thank you so much for appearing on Keen on America. We'll have to get you back, Nick. Lots more to talk about in 2026.
That was awesome. Thanks, Andrew.